Hello and welcome to a special edition of Husker Dive here, joined by our first non-Husker athletes, Redcast Rob and Honky of the Go Big Redcast, my first ever podcast I listened to. So thank you guys for coming on. How you doing?
Great, man. Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Doing great, man. It's the weekend, so
that's true. Yeah, this is awesome for me too to be able to have you guys on. So I was just gonna first start off with how did you guys get into podcasting? Because I know you were the first podcast I listened to, and I've watched or listened to every episode for the last few years, and just seen you guys grow a lot. So how has that all happened?
Yeah, Boomer would say that we picked a glorious time to start, which was spring of 2017, coming off what is now the last winning season that we've had. But Dave and producer Skip, there's 7 of us all in Redcast LLC, but producer Skip and Dave were in China over the Thanksgiving in 2000.
Japan.
Or was it Japan? Okay,
yeah, it was
they were
Japan.
in Japan. Okay, in 2016, and they were. No, he said Shanghai. Anyways, doesn't matter. They were overseas, and it was Thanksgiving Day. They were watching the Nebraska-Iowa game in 2016 at 3 a.m. or whatever. And Dave was saying, "Hey, we should do a podcast." And Skip had the production skills to say, "Yeah, I can put it together if you do it." And that kind of planted the seed. We've been talking about, we've had people tell us for years you should do one, and it was just whatever. But once it was kind of like, hey, we're lazy. If someone else can do it for us and do all the production work, then yeah, we'll sit down and talk. And so that started the process. And then, yeah, we've been going straight since then. We've kind of evolved over the course of the 5 years. And as we were talking about beforehand, about the last 6 months, we started doing the live YouTube video piece. And that's been really cool because then that gets the Redcasters involved. And, you're watching it, you can ask questions, comments, all that along the way. And Rob really has gotten involved heavily. I'd say about the last 2 years, you think of it?
2 or 3. So my background is sales. That's what I do for a living. And currently I'm working for a newspaper company, Prairie Mountain Media, which is the largest newspaper organization in Colorado. And I do advertising and marketing for them. And it came up at a party. Honky was there. I think Mac was there. Dave was there. And they were talking to me and asking about if there was any way to maybe monetize the podcast, because they were starting to get a lot of listeners. And I'm like, yeah, that's easy. And Honky's like, cool, I got this email from this company. Can you set something up? And so I within 2 days, I had a contract from the company.
Oh, wow.
And we were doing advertising. And then the pandemic came around, and we were all sitting around and being really bored. And I don't even really know how it happened, the evolution of it, but I would just start logging in and listening to them do the podcast. I wasn't involved. I'd just be maybe watching whatever sports was on TV at the time, or playing a video game and listening to them do the podcast. Then one night Mac had to work, and Honky's like, "Do you want to come on the show?" So I came on the show, and I'm not even quite sure what I was saying, or I think I said something about Omar Manning, and they still make fun of me about it today. And then now here I am. And I've still sometimes on a daily basis try to figure out how I even got here in the first place. But
I think Dave thinks that too.
And Dave and Skip definitely think that too. And Boomer's just Boomer. Boomer's just kind of seriously, Boomer wakes up in the morning, and I'm pretty sure it doesn't matter what day of the week or what time of the year it is. Boomer's just Boomer.
Yeah, it's a great group of guys. Most of them, other than Skip and Rob, I've known since I was 10. We're all from Columbus, and then Skip and Rob are both out there in Colorado, and Dave lives out in Colorado, so you got to know him through that. I also want to give credit to graphic designer Swobes. All of the design that we have, all of that comes from Dan. Also, the name Go Big Redcast. If it would have been up to me, I was going to call us the Columbus Boys or something like that. And so Dan, I'd never listened or I've never listened to a podcast before we started actually podcasting. I think that's something I've heard from other podcasters too. You just kind of start doing it. At the time, we called ourselves the Go Big Redcast, and there was the Big Red Cobcast out there at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never heard of them. I didn't even know they existed until we got onto Twitter. And I'm like, oh man, we just we just sound exact. Our name sounds like theirs. Their graphic was a corn cob with a microphone on it. We had a microphone for our graphic. I mean, it looked like we copied everything they did. And literally it was just, we did zero market research. So I had no idea, but it looked like we had copied them, and they were super cool guys. We did some crossover stuff with them while they were still doing it. And they, it's just been fun to get to meet people in Husker Nation doing this too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic too, because I met Dave in like 2010, and I've been a Husker fan, I you could say, since I was a kid, because my mom's side of the family is all from Nebraska. But I would watch the games, but I didn't really become like really paying attention until Dave and his wife Katie, who I actually knew before Dave, invited me to start watching games with them on Saturdays back in 2010 or so. And so we'd meet up at this bar that was a watch bar that I actually hung out at quite a bit back then. And so that's kind of when I really started to get to know all these guys. Dave invited me on a golf trip with Matt, and actually Swobes is Katie, Dave's wife's brother. So there's like a lot of connection going on in there. And then Skip's wife, I was friends with her and Katie before I even knew Dave and Skip. And so, now I'm friends with all of them. And, it's just kind of one of those weird situations where here we are.
Yeah. And 2 years later, after hopping on once, you're on it every time now.
Well, and now my wife gets worried if I don't talk to Honky on the phone at least once a day. So it's gotten to that point.
There you go. I wanted to ask you guys, since it's kind of taken off a little bit, and now you're part of like the Hale Varsity Club and everything. Like, what are some of the coolest experiences, or if you had to pick one, like what would be the coolest thing that's happened because of the podcast?
I'll only one. I guess the coolest thing, we're part of the Hurrdat Media Network. Hurrdat owns Hale Varsity, which means they own Hale Varsity Club and Hale Varsity the magazine, all that. This even predated us being part of Hurrdat. I had Mike Babcock, who I've idolized growing up. I read all his stuff and would watch him. We had him on before we even joined Hurrdat Network. We had him on a show, and we did a Husker History 101 and went for a couple hours, and it was audio only, but we did, I have posted it to YouTube since. It's just a blank screen and you can listen to it, but I didn't know how to put a graphic to it. But anyways, getting to talk to Mike Babcock and talk Husker history with him. And then, and now a couple of weeks, and we did that right before the COVID hit. Then we just got to have him on again about 3 weeks ago. We did Nebraska, Oklahoma, 2 hour long rivalry show. And it was just awesome. I mean, I'm like a little kid doing it because I'm talking with Mike Babcock as we're going through the 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s of Nebraska, Oklahoma football. And so it's that to me, call it a perk or whatever. It's just, that's one of the really cool things. And we're going to talk to Sipple here on Monday night. We just got to talk with Aaron Sorensen. Rob fanboyed all over her because he just loves the work that she does. And so that's some of the really cool things that we've been able to do for me. Rob?
I mean, I could easily say that the interview with Tom Osborne was probably one of the coolest things. And the fact that, well, that's okay. And it's funny because, and you said multiple times, Honky, that for you, Mike Babcock was that moment for you. But that's really easy too. And it's pretty cool. I have Coach's phone number, and like I texted him the other day and wished him and gave him our condolences on the passing of Jack Pierce, and he texted me back and was just like, "Thank you very much. That means a lot, Robert." So that's cool, but that's too easy for me. The coolest part of all of this was 2 years ago. I started my new annual tradition of making the trek out for the spring game, and I got a room at Embassy Suites. And Honky and I are sitting at the bar during happy hour, and I only really drink when I'm around Matt anymore. I don't really drink otherwise. And we're sitting at the bar and we're drinking the free beers, and this woman comes over and goes, "Excuse me, are you guys the Go Big Redcast?" And both of us look, because we're not wearing t-shirts, we're not wearing anything like that advertises it. And we go, "Yeah." And she goes, "Because I recognized your voice." She says this to Matt, like, from across the bar. And it was Laura Huntmacher, the
Oh.
Nash's mom. And she's like, would you guys like to come over and have drinks with us? And she invited us over to the table. So it was his mom and dad and his entire family.
The dad wasn't there at the time.
The dad wasn't there yet.
He
He showed up.
We didn't get to see
end,
Joe. That would have been cool.
Yeah, but they well, I think he showed up at the end because I remember thinking like, oh my God, that's a large human being.
Just a great family though. I mean,
yeah, I mean,
smokes.
the nicest people, and his aunt was there, and it was cool because that was like kind of the first time in my head where I was just like, and I'm in Nebraska and I'm like, wow, people really do listen to this because she's a listener. She follows on Twitter, like all those other things.
That's crazy.
So to me, that was the coolest thing. And I know it could be a multitude of guests, but that was one of the coolest things for me because I think in that point in my head, it really clicked like, okay, like maybe like I was serious about it, but like maybe I should get a little bit more serious about this and do a little bit more because my Lord, like the listeners aren't just like average Joe on Twitter. There are like parents of coaches or of players and you know actual media people that are listening to us. So we need to, you know,
there's a responsibility that what I took away from that was you never know who's going to hear what you say. And we have a public service announcement that's also out there on Twitter that producer Skip put together, just a great piece. Soot, SOOT, stay off of Twitter. And it's a public service announcement about, you know, you're going to start tweeting at a 20-year-old kid and tell them how terrible they are after a loss. Maybe it's time, you know, stay off of Twitter. Just you know, think about it, and that words matter, and that we have a reach. I mean, and we can say something and it can be positive or it can be negative. We could go out there and just rip into the defensive line. Who knows? Maybe we'd be talking about Nash, you know, Laura's son, and just saying, you know, these horrible things. Well, there she is listening to it. And when I started to think about that, it's like, I'm not just talking into a laptop to my buddies. I mean, it's not, I'm not trying to make us bigger than we are. It's just that we do have some reach. And so what we say does matter. What you type on social media does matter. And if you don't use that responsibly, then you know, I guess, you know, you'll earn whatever backlash comes with it. We try to be very careful with what we say and how we say things, and we get upset with losses just like any other fan, but just trying to do that, I guess, in a responsible way.
Keep it in perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy though, that she like knew your voice even. That's wild.
You know, and I know you said one thing, but the other thing too is you make some really great connections. One of them, Tyler Kai, is associate athletic director at UNL. He's a stud. He's a great dude. And he was on our show. He's been helpful. Like, I went on vacation with my wife and son, and we go all around the country, and I drive us hours out of the way to go see football stadiums. And we went to Tennessee and West Virginia and stuff this summer. And he used to work at Tennessee, and he's like, well, let me see if I can contact someone when you go there. Because a lot of times I just try to, you know, get into the stadium, take a couple photos and leave. Oh no, he sets me up. I end up getting a tour of the stadium. You know, I'm like, it's super cool. Like just little things like that, I guess perks or whatever you want to call it. Those are really cool moments.
Yeah. And when I was out there for the spring game this year, he gave us another tour of the entire facility. And we actually got to walk through the Indomitian Sioux weight room, you know, the football players' weight room. We got to walk through, we got to do the tunnel walk, see the training facilities. We got to see a lot of the plans and things like that, which they asked us not to talk about, but we got to see some of the plans, like for completion, everything of the new athletic facilities, and just some of the things that they plan on putting in there for the public to see. I mean, and even after that, we went to the game. We were hanging out again in the lobby, and next thing I know, like, we're talking with this guy. I don't know who he is. Honky knows who he is. Well, I didn't know who he was, I should say. And it was Josh Heskew, right? Center for the 97 team, like, and his wife, and they're down there, and they just sat there. I mean, literally for hours sat there, and we were talking everything from just life to football. And then I tried to go eat, and the restaurant that I tried to go to was closed. So I come back, and he's like, well, what's wrong? They're closed. I said, yeah. He said, well, why don't you guys come to this party with us? We're just headed across the street over to Rosie's. We're going to have you know, so we're like, cool, let's go to this party with Josh Heskew. And we walk across the street, and standing out front is Mike Rozier, and he's got like his Heisman shirt on and all that. So, we stop and we're talking with him and he's like shaking our hands, and it felt like a lot of these people knew us. And then we go inside the party and it's all these players from like the 90s, like just hanging out, having a good time, reminiscing about football. And I'm pretty sure that like Matt and I, Honky and I we're the only two that weren't actual. Oh, and his buddy Gary was there with us too. And we were like the only ones that weren't associated with Nebraska.
Yeah, we shouldn't have been there.
And we shouldn't have been there. But when we walked in, they were like, "Hey Josh, who's this guy?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm his son." And he was just like, "Well, I know his son. You sure have grown a lot." And like started laughing. He's like, "Yeah, go in." So I mean, there was pretty tight security, but they let us in, and there was like food and drinks, and like, I mean, like I said, I don't really drink, but like they were handing me shots of Fireball, and I'm sitting there like, "Yeah, I'll take shots of Fireball with players from the 90s." So that was really cool. Something I'll never forget. So
wow, that's insane. Like that it can just take you, like you get all those connections like you were talking about, and it can just one day take you that far. That's crazy.
Yeah, and the whole point of that too is that some of the players that were in there actually listened to the podcast. Like they knew who we were. Like we kind of got recognized by one of the other players, and he's like, "Hey, can I take a selfie with you guys?" And he like used my phone to take a selfie. And yeah,
it should be noted too, I was wearing this shirt that day, so it wasn't I was a walking billboard for us.
So they knew who you were. They listened.
Yeah. And it was funny because I woke up in the morning and I was just like, "Honky, who was that guy that took the selfie with us and like texted the photo to himself?" And he's like, "I'm not even sure." And it was who was it? Matt? It was a Booker. Yeah, Michael Booker. So
it was just really cool, and
yeah, it was weird. It was surreal. I think is sometimes the feeling, because
I bet.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. We got a little bit over 10 minutes left, so I have a few more questions. I have one more question, just like on kind of overall stuff. So if you could pick, okay, so what are your hopes and goals for the Go Big Redcast? If you have any. I mean, you already accomplished so much going to these parties with these
players. to be around on week 2 of the season, I don't know.
I mean, yeah, I think we've all said that if they lose to Northwestern, we might all rage quit. So for me, I'm just happy to be here, and that's not a lie. Like I am. Every time I get to come on and do the shows, it's for me, it's just a lot of fun. It's just a really good hobby. Matt, maybe I mean that's really what it is like we just want to keep having fun with it, and I believe that all of us will keep doing it while we're still having fun. And one of us stopped having fun, and and we've said it many times, we were at the Illinois game last year, so I'm surprised that we're still here right now.
That's where Matt quit. But it's funny when you talk to Tom Osborne and Damon Benning and Michael Severe, those are the people that bring Mac back on, because so he's, even though he's quit, he's involved, and he'll be on our show with Sipple here and stuff. So that's fun for him, and we have enough people involved. There's some podcasts out there where it's just 2 guys or 3 guys or tops, and we have enough people involved with this that we're now at a point where you can kind of interchange some people. I mean, there might be times of the year where I want to take a week off too, and we can do that with our group. That's an advantage we have with 7 guys. But really at the end of the day, the most fun I have on the show, as much as I've loved everyone I've just said that we talked about with, Babcock and Coach Osborne and all that stuff, the best is still when we get the core 5 of us on, when Mac is there, Rob, Dave, Boomer, and I. Those are the best shows that I love the most, regardless of what the viewership numbers or any of that stuff is.
Yeah, for sure. That's cool. And it's like, like the core of you, like you said, being on together. I mean, that's just why you guys started, was just to have fun with it too. So that's awesome.
Yeah, we had no expectations. We also had no exit strategy. So I have no, you don't go into podcasting with like, well, this is how we're going to end it. No idea. It's just, it's just like, oh my God, we've done this for 5 years now. What do you do now? But I enjoy things like this, Nate, as much as anything. Is just, I love talking with Husker fans. And so that I enjoy doing this with you as much as I enjoyed any of the ones we've done with media people or anything.
Yeah.
Hopefully someday the introduction to the show sounds something like, Welcome to the Go Big Redcast. Because we're all like 80 years old still doing it, right?
Could be.
That would be awesome. All right. I got a couple of football questions with you before the time runs out. So first, what's been your favorite fall camp story to follow?
You go, Rob.
My favorite fall camp. The running back position. Let's stick with that today. I'm curious because while everyone says that I'm a throw the ball guy, I also do like a good running back, and I think for me so far it's nice to see that there are probably 4 guys that are competing for that starting spot. Like while they always talk about 1 or 2, it always seems like number 1 or number 2 is changing around, and it's been constant. So I'm looking forward to see who that bell cow is going to be, and also how they use some of these other 3 guys, I should say, since there'll be 1 that's a bell cow, in certain situations, whether it's splitting somebody out wide on third, or maybe using Yant as a short yardage back, or what are they going to do in the red zone from the 10-yard line in? Like, are they going to start running somebody up the middle? Are they going to use somebody like Yant as a fullback? Like, what kind of what's going to happen in the Whipple offense? Are for all we know, we might throw it for 4 downs in a row in the red zone. So it'll be interesting to see.
I'm both sides of the trenches, the O-line, D-line. The D-line, we had Brett Ciancia Pick Six previews on a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about his position rankings of D-line and linebacker. And I'm like, we've got guys, these edge guys that could be either or. And really, to me, what's important is front 7. And he actually said, there's so many different defenses out there. He might, in his next year's edition, he might just rename that front 7 instead of D-line and linebacker. And my point behind that is that I love what our front 7 could be this year, and the edge spot, but also, I mean, the returning linebackers of Henrich and Reimer, and then you have, you still have Robinson, Hutmacher, guys that, Feast, that are all coming back, but then you throw the transfers in there, Drew, who just got here, Wynn from Alabama, who's been here since, June. And there's some depth in there, and this 4-man front that we're going to run, I'm really intrigued to see how that looks. And then conversely, on the O-line, getting Ben Hart to really man that right tackle spot can open up Corcoran to move around, float around between the guard and center, find the right spot for him. Prohaska, he's going to be a little rusty, I expect that, but he'll get through that, and they can stay healthy. Really interested to see what Raiola does with that line, how they kind of change up some of the scheme with blocking, and we gotta win in the trenches if we're going to win the Big Ten.
Yeah, for sure. I think the defensive line's cool too, because it was like seen as such a position of weakness. And then like in the transfer portal, I mean, it got some optimism going, but still people had their doubts. And now, like, if you like listen to Sipple on early break, or like these other media people talking about the defensive line, it's now seen, even on the interior, it's seen as like a position of strength, which is
I think of the roller coaster that Husker fans go through, and they do it every off season. But back in December, my goodness, when we've lost Martinez, and then we don't get the UCF and the USC quarterback, we're not going to get a quarterback. We're not. Well, we were doing shows back then. I'm like, settle down, people. The transfer portal hasn't even really started. Wait till the bowl season gets done. We're going to at least get 1. We might even get 2. I had no idea, no concept that the 2 we would get would be a starting quarterback from Texas and a young guy from Florida State. No concept of that. But then you fast forward a couple more months, and also we're losing Casey Rogers and some guys on the D line, and people are losing their mind again. It's like, and I sent a tweet out that I'm like, settle down, folks. The transfer portal swings both ways. Give us a chance to get our guys back. And before you know it, you're getting a transfer from Alabama, from Texas Tech. You're getting the top edge guy from TCU with O'Shawn Mathis. Rob did a great Lunchcast episode with O'Shawn's mom. The staff, they're not dumb. Okay. I mean, the staff, I'm not trying to be a defender of everything. I mean, they've lost games that they shouldn't have lost in the past and all that. I get that. But, that they know what they need to do to man a team and get the roster up, and I'm full support of what they've put together for the roster.
Yeah. Well, and like they know their backs are against the wall. Like Frost isn't dumb. And like, so he's going to go out there and do everything that he can. So like, I just feel like in the offseason, especially, like he had a plan that he laid out to Alberts, and he was going to follow that plan. And I just feel like people just needed to take a step back and calm down and let the offseason be the offseason. And it's a lot to ask.
This offseason's been played out 500,000 times on Twitter, and it's like, we haven't played it. I've heard people conspiracy people that are like, oh, this coach doesn't get along with this coach. I'm like, they haven't even coached a game yet, folks. Come on, let's settle it down, eat some dip. It'll be okay,
Yeah.
2 weeks. 2 weeks, guys.
Oh my
2
goodness.
weeks.
I cannot wait.
We'll actually get to watch games.
All right, we got a little bit over 5 minutes left. I got a question for both of you. So Redcast Rob, you're arguably like the most optimistic Nebraska fan. I know it's in your Twitter bio, 15-0, 3 point whatever percent.
0.3.
Yeah. So what is like your most optimistic take for Nebraska besides going 15-0 for this year?
Oh boy, where do I start? First of all, I will say that it's funny that everyone sees that, because I am a realist. I admittedly, I said it, the 15-0 and all that shtick is, mostly like on Twitter and whatnot. I would be happy with the 10-2. But my most optimistic take this year is that all of our worries and fretting and wondering what everything is going to look like for Nebraska football in 2022 is going to be answered against Northwestern in a blowout win. And we're going to see everything, and we're going to see everything we want to do. The team is going to get the confidence, and we're going to go into the Oklahoma game in week 4 for us, week 3 for them, 3-0 versus a 2-0 Oklahoma. And it's going to get the highest TV ratings for that television spot ever for what is that? The Fox
Big Noon kickoff.
The Fox Big Noon kickoff. It will get the highest ratings ever for a game in that time slot for Fox Big Noon kickoff, because it'll be 2 undefeated top 25 teams.
If you let him keep going, it's going to be one thing after, and it's going to be one more optimistic thing.
Hey, I'm here for it.
Just starting with that beginning part was good. Then all of a sudden we're getting into TV ratings, but no.
I tweeted that out today too, so I'm just really doubling down on it. So,
hey, well, I'm here for the optimism. All right, I got one more football question for you. If you could go to just one game this year, excluding Ireland, because that would be sweet, but excluding that, what game would you go to?
Me or Matt?
Both.
You go, Rob.
Well, I'm already going to the Georgia Southern game, and so I could pick that easily because I'm going to the 311 show the night before, so it's going to be a great weekend with my wife. But I would love to be able to make the trek back the following week for the Oklahoma game. I feel like that's an experience that I would love to have, considering that, we left the Big 12 shortly after I really started, the last 12, 13 years that I've really started watching. I never really got that opportunity. So that would probably be the one that I'd want to go to the most.
Yeah, this is the first year that my wife and we got season tickets, and we hadn't had that in about 20 years. So going to all the home games anyways, and I've been to all the away stadiums now, Wisconsin and Wisconsin not, but Michigan, Iowa. I've been to games. Purdue, we just went to the stadium. Purdue might be a away game that I'd want to go to, but to me, it's a no-brainer at home. It's Oklahoma. Went to the Oklahoma game last year. I did a 2-hour special on it with Mike Babcock. I mean, that series, the history, the rivalry of that, for the younger Redcasters that didn't get to experience what that rivalry was on an annual basis, that was it's everything that Ohio State and Michigan never was. It was everything that, a traditional rivalry, and it became a casualty of conference realignment starting in 1998 in the Big 12, when we didn't play them on an annual basis anymore. Became a 2 on 2 off, and then eventually just off once we actually left the conference. But the rivalry, we need to keep doing things like what we're doing this year, playing them every once in a while, just to, nothing else, keep it alive. That game meant something for a long, long time.
For sure. I've been to Purdue as well. I went to school in Indiana, so I went to the Nebraska Purdue game. It was a small school called Indiana Wesleyan.
I went to the Indiana West, and the town starts with an M.
Marion.
Yeah, I took a photo there on the way. We were driving up to Muncie. Or we were going from Muncie to the Boilermakers to Purdue, and a coach had taken a photo on the field. They're like the Bobcats or a cat or something like that. Wildcats. Yeah. Because they have a statue there. Yeah. And it was this really nice looking stadium. And this coach that morning took a a photo on Twitter saying, look, you don't have to go to D1 schools to have these
Oh,
great
yeah.
facilities.
It's
And
an
I
NAI school.
And I look at the photo, and we're staying that morning in like Indianapolis area or whatever. And I was like, we were going to drive up to Purdue, and I'm like, what the hell? Let's just do a different route so I can stop at that stadium.
It's so nice.
And then Muncie, which was really cool. It was cool to see Ball State. But yeah, so Marion, we drove right through.
That's
there.
crazy. That's Marion's such a small town. That's wild. But yeah, it's a super nice school, great in all their sports, and like they the football program started 5 years ago. So that stadium's like brand new. It's sweet.
It was pretty.
Yeah. But thank you guys for coming on. Really appreciate it. And make sure to check you guys out at the Go Big Redcast. I'm sure if you're listening to this, you already have listened to the Go Big Redcast. But tell them where everybody can find you.
At Go Big Redcast on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. YouTube is really, I call it that our homepage now. So go there and subscribe, like, do all that good stuff, and Go Big Red.
Sweet. Thank you guys for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thank you.